Do it. I don't care even if you don't want to do it. If you don't feel like doing it, do something, because that doing of something, momentum creates momentum. Movement creates movement. And it's amazing once you start that, it's a snowball effect.
Woo! Come on, welcome all to your space for everything empowerment. I am your host, Tariq Williams, and not only I am Vision of Hope, but we are Vision of Hope. We're not alone here. This is a we thing. We all want to grow. We all want to get better. We all want to feel empowered. That's what the Speak Your Vision podcast is all about. And this episode, super excited. Once again, I am not alone on this episode, and I do my best here to bring some amazing guests to you all, and this is none different. I heard this individual's story, and I learned a lot, and I know that you're going to learn a lot. We're bringing value today. We're bringing empowerment. We're bringing recognizing your purpose and always bringing action to it. So I want to welcome April Diaz, Executive Leadership Coach. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh my gosh, that intro was already wonderful and perfect, and I cannot wait to get going. Thank you for having me, Tariq.
And I can't wait for the people to learn from you. I know I'm going to learn more every time I've been around you. You've been just you're focused. You want to learn. You want to grow, and that energy, which we're going to get into some energy stuff later on, where April's going to share some stuff with us that we're going to be able to tap into, but the energy that you bring to the table, I think, is one of focus and one of drive. So I appreciate you for that.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been so good to get to know you over the last year now.
Yeah.
And to be with your audience and kind of talk about the things we're going to talk about today. I hope will just be of huge value to your folks.
So language is very important to the podcast. Every time I have a guest, I talk about this. So you all should be with me, audience, that know that I always say language is very important to the podcast. And you've had an interesting journey.
Yeah.
And so we're going to get into some of that today. Maybe I already want to have you back on, but to get us started, what's one word that defines the word purpose for you?
One word that I would say to define purpose, I think, is vision. I think you know your purpose when you know where you're going.
So that's interesting. Well, first of all, this is the Speak Your Vision podcast. So
I feel like you set me up. That was a bump set spike, my friends. But that's what I think. Like, to know what it is that you are supposed to be about, you have to see something in order for you to participate in it. And I actually think, as you're talking about language, we reveal ourselves in our language. And language is a reflection of what it is that we believe. And so in purpose, I don't know that anybody has like one purpose, or there's not like some big meta purpose that you got to find and it's like super specific. But purpose is about where you're going and then how you're contributing along the way to live more into that. So I think our purpose evolves as our vision evolves.
Okay, for sure. So I really we're diving in, okay? Because I learned some things about you recently that I thought was really interesting, because from my knowledge, from what I understand, from my past experience, people that feel called and they feel like that their purpose is to have a profession in the church. You were a pastor for 17 years.
I was.
And you decided to transition. You decided to change what it was that you were doing. And that was really interesting to me, because I feel like, once again, when people want to become a pastor or choose your,
fill in the blank,
they feel
teacher,
called to that, right? Exactly.
Yep.
So why the pivot? Why the change? Because I guess your purpose, did you feel like your purpose changed in life? And why did you make that change?
So the things that we do, hopefully, are a reflection of who we are. And so pastoring was the vehicle by which I was doing the things that reflect who I am. And I think at the core of who I am is I love people. I love taking people to places they have not yet been. So I would describe myself primarily as a leader. And so the container or the vehicle by which I was doing that for 17 years was pastoring. It was in a church context. It was with a local group of people. And the pivot or the change came not because that calling changed to love, invest, lead people, but because the vehicle I just needed to swap it out. I needed a new car. There wasn't anywhere else that I could go in that role and in that vehicle that would allow me to continue to expand my leadership, to fulfill more of my potential. And I am really committed to become the fullest version of myself. And so I was 35 years old when I realized I'd kind of hit the ceiling of what I could do in that former vehicle, and I needed to find something else. But the truth is that I did not have an imagination for what else would be possible for me outside of pastoring. I thought that I would always do that because I had misequated the vehicle as the destination. And so I needed to find an imagination for what else could be possible with these gifts and skills and passions and the ways that I have been wired in order to kind of continue to fulfill that calling and that vision and that sense of purpose.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting because I think that some people would think that being a pastor is the ultimate, right? And so, and not saying that it isn't for certain people, but I just think it's, like I said, that was a really interesting pivot that I thought, because I think that when people are at a church, I feel like a lot of times, like, so for example, growing up, my pastor, his career, his profession was correctional officer.
Wow.
And then he pivoted himself to becoming a pastor. Like, that was the thing.
Yeah.
So I guess just explain to me then, like, tell me about the impact, I guess, that you feel like you're able to have in this situation now that maybe it's a little bit different.
Yeah, it's a great question. Honestly, a lot of it had to do with the fact that I'm a woman. There are a lot of restrictions and limitations and things that hold women back from leading fully. And I would say the vast majority of church spaces. I did not experience that in the last place that I served. And I had been in a couple of different environments. I only worked at 2 churches over 15 or 17 years. But in those 2, I did have a lot of room to grow and use my gifts freely and fully. But there still is some stuff that doesn't allow for women with really strong gifts and ambitions and goals and vision to be able to fully execute on that. That was my experience. And as I have coached now hundreds and hundreds of women with leadership gifts, they have also found that to be true in a lot of faith spaces. So I am still a person of deep, deep, deep faith. It is my worldview. It is the way that I govern my life. It is how it defines me. But I needed a different environment in order to really thrive. And so when I left that space, I went into a kind of a freelancing coaching for a bunch of other folks. And I had one really pivotal moment before I started my business where I actually got fired from a job that was kind of the baseline for my work. And it was a really painful experience. It felt very unjust. I felt very misunderstood. And I had a really clear moment on the patio at 3:00 in the morning with God, where I had thrown a blanket around my shoulders because I was about to have a panic attack in my bed at 3 a.m. and I didn't want to wake up my husband. So I went out on the patio and I threw this blanket around my shoulder and I sat down on the couch and looked out into the sky, saw a couple of shooting stars, and just like started sobbing because I felt I had purpose, but I didn't have direction. And I didn't know where to go and what to do next. And I really clearly heard God say, like in my DNA, I heard, for 20 years, you have built other men's visions. It is time for you to build the vision that I have given to you. And I cried more, said some swear words, but like a clear moment of there were containers that had kind of hemmed me in and kept me safe and protected in some ways, but also limited me. And that moment was kind of a breakthrough moment for me of going, okay, I have something new, some greater purpose to walk into that doesn't exist in other spaces that I have contributed to. And so I got to move in this direction.
Wow.
That's pretty
Wow.
profound.
I mean, you just shared some real here that some people might not want to agree with. Some people may want to like, oh, that can't be real. But you just spoke your truth. You're telling your story, and it's the real. And I that's wow. Mm.
Yeah, it's a true story. It's a true story. And, I don't always hear God. It's not an audible thing,
Sure.
but it was so clear. And when you know that you know something like in your gut, whatever you call it and whoever you think it's from, like
Sure.
you know it. And it's like, this is a shift. And when you have a trajectory shift, you got to keep going in that direction and it will land you in a completely different destination because you've pivoted.
But I'm even also speaking to the part where it's like sometimes in some spaces, women are not, I would say, looked at as being the leader, like not looked at as being the person to look to. And I feel like we know that to be true, but some people still don't want to hear that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the same thing by, saying that like me being Black, you know what I'm saying? Like it's a little bit, it's not a little bit, it's just a fact, right?
First.
But it's just interesting that specifically, I would say in a space like church, people really don't want to hear what I don't want to believe that, I want to say. So that's really interesting to me. And, I think about for me, when you talk about the pivoting piece, right? And the being a pastor was the vehicle you were using to live in your purpose. It's interesting that you say that because I remember when, a lot of my listeners, they all know my story. I became blind at 16 and I had no interest actually at first in working in blindness at all.
Sure. I had the same thing about being a woman and a leader, right? Like, just leave it alone, right? Let's move on.
Leave it alone. Let's move on. But then it was like, I saw some impact I was having. So then I got certified in teaching blind people how to travel, orientation and mobility. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm working at the center that I work at, and I went to a Phoenix Mercury game with some coworkers. Okay. And at one point, one of my coworkers and I, who she doesn't work there anymore, but one of my coworkers and I were walking side by side after the game. And I love basketball. Okay. And we're walking after the game, dark night, getting back to the vehicles and everything like that. And she goes to me, so Tariq, like, I don't really know you that well. Why is orientation and mobility, cane travel for blind people, why is that your passion? And I sat back. Well, I didn't sit back and we were walking. But I took a deep breath and I said, it's not.
Yeah.
And she was blown away by that because I've just been working at this place for maybe a couple months at this point, right? So she's like, what do you mean? Like, this is your job now. You just got here. And like, why is it your passion? You're telling me that it's not? And I said, no, orientation and mobility is not my passion. Teaching cane travel, teaching blind people how to travel is not my passion. I believe that my purpose, my space in this life, passion, if you will, but I think of passion in a different way. But my purpose is empowerment. And this is just how I'm doing it right now.
That's the vehicle, right?
There you go.
The vehicle may change.
Exactly.
And I think the vehicle needs to change as you grow, as you mature, as you learn, as you adapt, as the world changes, right? The vehicle probably needs to change. But I am a deep believer that your whole story matters. And so part of the pivot and then the embrace for me into the work that I'm doing now, and I hear it in your story too, is your story matters. Like you becoming blind at 16 years old, massive pivot, right?
Yeah.
But if you pay attention to your story, like your story is not just for you. Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, God's word to us is almost always for the other. And so when things happen to us, air quote, it's not happening to us. I believe it's happening for us and for the other. Oftentimes the other is someone who is not like you, but there are some distinctive overlaps in your story. And then I also think that your pain can become this place of supernatural power in life and leadership and everything that you do. And so for you as a Black man who has gone blind, there are some deep pain points in there. And that can become a place of really supernatural power in the way that you serve and the way that you love and the way that you empower other people, right? And so part of that for me was going like, well, I am clearly a woman who has strong leadership gifts and communication gifts and a lot of ambition, a lot of dreams and goals. Like these things are not for accidents. So what are they there for? And I have then a responsibility to take those things and to make sure that the environments that I'm in, the people that I'm surrounded with, the ways that I am exhibiting them are in alignment for me using them fully. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. Not only does it make sense, I think it's important for people to understand that are listening right now that, we live in a world, a society that's full of judgment when people aren't doing well and whatever, but it's also when people are full of success, right?
Sure.
And we judge them and we whatever, right? But here's the thing. You don't judge a man or a woman based upon where they're at because you don't know what they had to go through to get there.
Yeah, true.
So I think about the lessons that I had to learn and the situation that you have been in that you've had to learn, right? It's all an equation to help us get to where we are. And that is a part of leadership. People just aren't leaders just like that, right? It takes some grind. It takes some work. It takes some... People don't want to hear this word. It's my word of the year. It does take some failure. I haven't accomplished anything in life without having some struggle or needing some improvement in my life. It's never just
100%.
happened.
Correct.
So when you're coaching the leaders that you coach and in those spaces, you've coached athletes, you've coached executives, you've coached several different teams there, so many different people. What does that look like when someone is trying to level up and they already think they're a leader? They've gone through some things.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like coaching executives is a unique space. Tell me about what those conversations look like to help those individuals level up.
Yeah. I just got like a giant smile on my face because I just love this conversation and I love the transformation that I get to see in leaders' lives in our work together. So there's a couple of just baseline beliefs that I have when it comes to coaching. One is that I believe you already have everything within you in order to fulfill your purpose, in order to fulfill the potential that you have been given. You already got it all. You don't need outside experts or voices or whatever to like give it to you. Everything that you need to fulfill the purpose and the potential that you have been given is already within you. So if we can start from there, then I am not your guru. I am not your expert. I am not going to solve the problems in your life or fix anything for you. You are not a problem to be fixed. All of that is really important to me as we start with coaching, is that I get to actually be like an unlocker or a midwife or a just a good question asker to help those things get moved forward and pushed out of you. The other thing that is really important to me in coaching the folks that I do is that my vision of leadership is that it is holistic. It is not about the externals. Most of the way that leadership has been taught and practiced and encouraged has been very externally based. We hit these KPIs, we make the strategic plan, we hit these goals, it's external. But what that has done is actually kill the internal of the leader. And so leaders have become segmented and compartmentalized, and it's my work life and my personal life. Like it is very destructive because that's how we're meant to live in that segmented, compartmentalized way. So one of the things that I tell my clients all the time is when you expand your internal capacity, you will naturally get different external results. So instead of thinking about what are the externals, all the things that I'm trying to achieve on the outside and pushing toward that, instead, why don't we look at how do we expand what is already within you, your internal capacity, so that this stuff just flows out of you. And we all know what that's like, being in that state of flow, right? Where there's just like these beautiful natural things. It's like, this was easy and fun and light, and this is just like who I am, right? So my coaching really works through 6 different parts of holistic leadership. So we start with physical, because your body is the basis for your whole life. Everything in which that you do in your life and in your leadership begins and ends in this body. Like when you stop breathing, you cease to exist, right? So nothing else is happening. So we start with your body, and so many leaders, we spend a lot of time in the body, because the way that I describe how your body is the basis for your leadership is it begins with your breath, it's supported by sleep, it's fueled by food, and it's maximized by movement. It's just those 4 things.
And you defined yourself earlier, and I don't know if you used this word on purpose or not, but I loved it. You said an unlocker, right? Yeah. And I love that because I've never heard that word before. But I like that because in order to unlock anything in your life, you have to unlock the potential of the body that you have.
Yes. And it's in there, right? Like you're unlocking something that is there's something inside that gets to be brought out. And that's what I get to do with folks every day. I mean, it's after we hop off this call, I'm going to jump on a coaching call. And it's just like the most beautiful, sacred space to be like, what can we unlock that is already within you today? But it is going to be within your body because your body is the basis for everything. So our 6-part framework is physical, emotional, mental, relational, spiritual, and renewal. It is in that order on purpose because your body is the most important for life, but moving through those parts, we end with spiritual and renewal because that is most meaningful for life. That is what is sustaining you. That is what kind of provides that meaning and purpose and value and the ability to sustain life. So it's kind of this full cycle within those 6 parts. And so that's what I coach through. And we pay attention. We have a proprietary wholeness assessment. We can actually offer a free version to your people if they would like to take that.
Let's go.
We can add that link to the show notes. But we have a 20-question shorter version that looks at these 6 different parts. And how are you doing? Like, let's give a reality check, right? Because part of what leaders do is you first define reality. Where are you right now? If you are going to have vision even for the future, you have to first define where are you right now?
But
what is currently happening?
Yeah, so many people skip that step though, right? It's like, I gotta
it's a crucial error.
I gotta be here by the end of the year. Like we talk about New Year's resolutions, right? Like, I want to do this year. How about you? What do you got to do in the next 2-3 months? Where are we?
What do you got to do today? I mean, one of the myths of coaching is that it's like a future, like fantastical living kind of thing, that we're all just about living into the future. Really what coaching is how do you want to participate differently in your life today?
Let's go.
So that you naturally get different results tomorrow or 6 months from now. So it is not about creating this false sense of reality down the road. Like, I want to be a millionaire in 6 months. Girl, you have $1,000 in the bank right now. How are you going to be a millionaire in 6 months?
It's not Amazon. It's not Amazon Prime.
You're not going to be an influencer. You're not going to get 1 million followers on Instagram and make all no. How do you want to participate differently today so that maybe in a year or 2 or 5, you can be a millionaire? But you have to participate in a way today that aligns with the person that you want to become and the results that you want to achieve down the road. That's what the work that we do in coaching, but it has to be through that holistic model. Because if you just are like hitting it and grinding and pushing and willpower and all of that other stuff, that does not get you very far for very long. You will burn out. And so it's also why we end with renewal, because the sustainable way for success has to involve all 6 of those parts in order for you to lead holistically and for it to be sustainable.
That sustainability piece right there, right? When it's not Amazon Prime. It's not going to happen in 1 or 2 days, right? But I think that sustainability piece is important because anything could look good for a day or two. What does that
Exactly.
consistency look like? I'm a big believer.
Okay, can I tell you something else?
Yeah, please.
This is just a bonus freebie fun thing.
Yeah.
So I have a son who's 16 years old. He came home from school a couple of months ago and he said, "Hey, Mom, I got to tell you about this thing called the brachistochrone curve." And I was like, "I don't know what this is." So he shows me this GIF. You can look it up online, brachistochrone curve.
Okay.
And it is the image that a couple physicists back in the 1600s, Newton was involved with this, where they thought that the fastest distance between, like for a ball to move along a line, the fastest way to get that ball from point A to point B was a straight line down, right? Or you could inverse that in kind of leadership, right? We talk about up and to the right. That's kind of how we want to see things go, is fastest up and to the right. But what the brachistochrone curve shows us in science is that the fastest distance between point A and point B is not a straight line from, one side to the other, but it's actually the dip. It is when that line gets curved down underneath, that ball in the curve gains momentum and reaches point B faster because of gravity than that ball that just would have like lightly cascaded down that line would have done. And what I think, again, is one of the myths of leadership and success and sustainability is that we think, how fast can we go and how quickly can we get there? And we think it's just this, up and to the right. Let's just scale the sucker as quickly as possible. When in reality, most of our successes come from the dip. It are the setbacks. They are the losses. They are the failures. They are the things that we prefer not to talk about and definitely don't make the headlines in those kinds of ways.
And
the dip is where it happens.
I've never heard that explained like that before. I've never heard of the Brachis Smithsonian. I'm just. But it's true. And people don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk. They're afraid of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Gosh, I can't tell you, April. People have came on the podcast and I've had conversations like, "Oh, I don't believe in failure. Like it doesn't exist. Failure is not real."
It's real. It exists. It is necessary. Period.
All right, let's move on.
Failure is one of our greatest teachers. If we are not failing, then what are we doing? We're playing it safe. We're playing small. We're hiding.
You're not dreaming big enough. You're not dreaming big enough.
Correct.
Absolutely not. It's easy. It's comfortable. We talk about growth being something that when you get out of your comfort zone, it's truly where it starts.
Yeah.
If you're not failing, you're not there. It's just a fact. So I love that we're so in alignment on this.
Simpatico. We are simpatico on that.
But it sounds good, April. It sounds good. But I know that for me as a coach as well, to have people recognize their value and their worth to move forward in their lives, like that's really where I focus on working professionals to ultimately beat burnout and overcome that feeling less than, right? I know that it can't be easy. I feel like when you're in a profession like this one, you've overcome something, you've went through. And I'm a big believer, and I truly believe is what I was going to say earlier, that the difference between good and great is consistency. And knowing you and in us working together, I've noticed you were setting the meetings, you were the consistent person, you were there. You're like, "Oh, all right, cool. I'm integrating this right now. Done. Like on it." Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But I know that you've had some hardships recently. And it's really affected how you've been able to live your life and show up for a little while there.
Yeah.
Tell me a little about the last couple of years.
Yeah, so we're recording this in Women's History Month, middle of March, 2025. And on March 30th, 2023, I got crazy sick. I never get sick. prior to that, I was super healthy. I was literally the strongest, fittest, leanest, thinnest, just kicking ass and taking names. Like I was living my best life. And my body just crashed literally overnight. Ended up taking a bunch of tests, series of doctors, over 200 different blood tests that were done. I was practically non-functional for the better part of 6 months, which is wildly different from how I normally operate. I am very high energy. I mean, you're catching a little bit of that on this podcast, right? Like I can get more done before 9 a.m. than most people can get done in a day. Like I will just something there. That's just my MO.
Yes.
And I was the antithesis of that for the better part of 6 months. And all the doctors were coming back and saying, everything looks normal. All of your tests are coming back normal. There's a couple of things that were like a little bit weird, but like couldn't really tie it down to anything.
So
fast forward, really,
real quick, how many doctor's appointments were you going through? Like,
oh, I don't even know. So many.
Wow. And they were telling you that you're fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're like, we know you're not fine, but you're also fine. Like nothing is coming back that would go, this is, you have this. So all of the big things were cleared up but I was like, clearly I'm not fine. So I did my own research. I started digging deeper and went into a different kind of trajectory to figure out what was happening because I just knew, I run my own business, right? So like when the CEO is not working, that's kind of catastrophic. And I was just not getting better. I would have some little roller coasters, like I could function for a little while and then I crashed again. But for the really better part of 6 months, I was not well. And long story short, I ended up getting into a different doctor's office with a completely different approach to medicine. It's called functional medicine, which really looks at the whole person and the whole body and the whole story of that person, which is very much in alignment with the coaching that I do and just the way that I view how we're supposed to live our life. And because I believe that your body is the basis for your whole life, I was like, I am literally in the fire right now, having to practice what I preach, having to figure out what is going on with my body because it is affecting every other part of my life.
So you're not getting up as well as you used to. You can't interact with your kids.
Oh, no. I mean, I would go take a shower and I would need to go back to bed for like 3 hours. It would just wipe me out. I could not function. And major brain fog, body aches, respiratory stuff. I couldn't put thoughts together. Like it was wild. I would go tell my kid, like, can you guys please go unload the washing machine? And I'd be looking at the dishwasher and they'd be like, what? And I'd look at them like they were crazy. And they look at me like I was crazy. And then I'd be like, oh, that's not a washing machine. That's a dishwasher. But I mean, I just literally couldn't put thoughts together. It was very disorienting on top of just having zero energy, no life to me. So long story short, in November of 2023, I ended up getting diagnosed with highly elevated mold toxicity. The first thing I said to my doctor was, listen, I know I'm getting older, but I am not moldy. Like, I am not a moldy old lady. I am only 43 years old at that time. And so I ended up getting mold, and it was from the home that we had lived in, and it was from water damage that had existed in the home previously. It turned into just a nightmare. So it has been 15 months since I was diagnosed. It's been 2 full years since I got sick, and I'm still in recovery. The doctors told me it would take me 12 to 24 months of treatment to have my body fully detox the molds because my levels were so high. And it has been the worst 2 years of my life for a couple of reasons. One, it's my health.
Yeah. Well, it just seems like your life was taken away from you without knowing what was next. Seems like everything was fine, and then overnight you kind of just lost energy, like it was just taken away. Yeah.
It was disorienting is one of just the best words that I can use for it. I felt so outside of it, just felt so unnatural and just not out of my body in a disembodied way, but just like I don't even know who I am anymore. I just could not function. So we have experienced tremendous losses over the last 2 years on every single level. And it actually has deeply reinforced my work because wholeness begins in your body. Your body is the basis for your whole life. But the way that it has, kind of overflowed into emotionally, like depression and anxiety and just deep, deep grief and sadness and loss, the way that it's challenged my thoughts of like, is it going to be like this forever? And what could I have done differently? And what did I do wrong? And what signs did I ignore? And I'm going to lose my business and my kids are going to be traumatized for life. And like the way that you think also creates your reality, the way that impacted my marriage and my motherhood and my business. All of those relationships paid a price and were impacted for better and worse by how sick I got spiritually, like my relationship with God. Like,
Wow.
what is this here for? And why is this happening? Why are you allowing this? And
That's exactly what I was going to get into in a sense, right? Like your life seemed to have been taken away from you for 2 years.
Mhm.
How do you overcome something like that when you feel like nothing is going your way? You can't function the way that you want to function. People are telling you that you're fine. And yet you know that when you go shower and you feel better for a split second, you got to go back to bed for 4 hours and you can't go spend time with your family and your friends and give the energy into your business that is your purpose, right?
Yeah.
How are you able to overcome that and feeling so low? Like, did you ever think about just maybe giving up and like, oh, the doctors have to be right. Like maybe there's just nothing out there for me.
No. I mean, to be clear, I found doctors who believed me and were able to make this diagnosis and then create a treatment plan. So since November of 2023, I have received excellent care. I have always been believed, and I have been able to get on a different trajectory for healing. So that has been a huge gift. And my husband also is just literally my favorite human on the planet. And he has always believed me. He has never challenged, doubted, questioned what I have said. He has always believed me that there's something was not right. And he's never pushed me to like do more than I could do, any of that. So I just know, I mean, you don't give up because one, in some ways, like purpose is beyond you, right? So like I look at my kids, I look at this business that I lead, and there's a deep sense of like, this is beyond me. This is more than me, but it needs me. And so I have to. Okay, so one of the things that we use in coaching is when point B, when your vision, when your future, when your goal is so far out there and it feels unattainable, what you need to do is you bring point B closer to the place where you actually can take action and do something different. So for me, especially I would say in that first 12 to 16 months of getting sick, point B was really close. It was like, what do I need to do today?
Okay.
What do I need to do this morning? I take my supplements. I drink a protein shake. I drink a whole bunch of water. I move from the bedroom to the couch and I lay on the couch. And it really, everything got so shrank down in terms of my capacity and what I could do. I had to master as best I could listening to and caring for my body. Because if this suffers, if this shuts down, everything else does, right? Nothing else can happen. And so I just lived that in Technicolor, moldy Technicolor, for a really long time of just, I need to listen to my body and give her what she needs. And so that has served me really well over these last 16 months, but it has, but then once I do that, then I can kind of see the next step for how to move beyond that.
There are people listening to this right now that can relate. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure.
In different forms or fashion. For you, it was the illness you were going through with the mold toxicity, but depression, right? And a myriad of other different things, okay, that it could be for the person listening.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that you had support.
Yep.
But was there ever a moment even where, because you described this time in your life as the worst 2 years of your life.
Yep.
So
100%.
you mentioned the support that you had from other people, that everybody believed you, but did you always believe yourself?
Yeah,
Mm,
I did.
mm,
And I think in part, there's a symbiotic relationship there. I think, Tariq, I believe in God,
mm,
and I just have a core belief that, again, nothing is impossible. Nothing is, whatever's happening to me is happening for me.
mhm,
That this is, um, that there's something bigger happening. And if I can pay attention, if I can stay present in it, if I can lean in, if I can embrace it, then it won't be wasted. And there'll be something immeasurably more that I could ask or imagine on the other side of it.
mm.
And so there's more of a belief, not just in me, because, dude, I'm a shit show a lot of times, right? But I think that, like, the way that I believe and relate to God and vice
Mm,
versa, it's like I can't give up. There's
mm,
something else here. And so this is, I also experienced 6 years of infertility, which was the second most difficult time of my life.
mm,
And one of the things that a dear friend of mine would say to me after every failed test and treatment and cycle was, this is not the end. And so part of, like, you owning your whole story and really paying attention to these pain points that can become platforms for supernatural power is that you see this greater story that's being written and go, oh, all of that is catalyzing, is integrating, is consolidating into something else that is next and bigger and greater and more profound. And so one of the things that I've held on to is, and I've told you this, I've been through a lot of shit in my life. Like,
mm.
I've gone to some really dark, hard places. I've experienced some really tough stuff. Not more than other people necessarily. Like, I'm not comparing, but just
Different. Yeah.
I have had yes, rose-colored lenses or like Yellow Brick Road. It hasn't been my story. It's been a lot of hard.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm stronger because of that. And I've told my husband really since the beginning, I think that what I've experienced these last 2 years, there is going to be something crazy profound and really deep and really impactful about this part of my story, because it has been so devastating. It has been so catastrophic on every level of our life. And
Mm,
it can't be wasted. I refuse for it to be wasted.
mm,
I am committed to it serving the most amount of people and for it to impact the leaders that I work with, the stages that I speak on, the podcasts that I get to sit in, for it to be of value and benefit, because it's just been too shitty for it to be otherwise.
wow. Wow. I think that a lot of people are hearing this and you're giving them something that I believe is really important, and that's why it's in my business name, is hope.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you feel, I think comfortable is the incorrect word, but so please correct me as I finish this here. But the fact that you can feel to some extent comfortable with talking about the first and second most difficult times in your life, I think there's something to be said for that you want to take that, bottle it so that you can teach and empower others. I think there's something to be said there for that, because once again, a lot of times misery, the quote, which I find to be true in a lot of cases, and that's why I fight against it. Maybe it's also why you fight against it. Misery loves company, right?
Yeah.
Misery doesn't always try to look for the answer to get through it. It typically looks for either the people that want to sulk with them or the escape, for the
Yeah.
brief temporary escape. But then you still
Yeah.
got to come back to it. If
Correct.
then you
Still
still got to
there.
come back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that you had moments where, with the situation with your house and the mold and everything like that, you could have just stopped, right? You could have just said, this is my life now. And it's been the worst 2 years of my life, and this I'm just gonna have to continue living.
Nope.
How did this situation affect your family?
Oh, man. Well, we're still recovering, and so I don't know the full answer to that story. We had to move, and which was a huge loss. We were in a community that we absolutely loved. So that's been hard, to have to move out of a home that my kids grew up in that was trying to kill their mom. So yeah, there's been a lot of losses. I think that, again, in a weird way, this has been one of the most valuable things in my marriage. I married my high school sweetheart, and we've been together for over 25 years. And I mean, I already said he's like my favorite person on the planet, but to see how he has stepped up and just run our family while I have been incapacitated has been pretty heroic. He has been pretty amazing. But it's taken a toll. I mean, it's been, to not have a partner where we partner on everything. We are just yin and yang. We are step in step with each other, and we support each other in everything. And to have a partner who's not partnering, but then he's having to care for me on top of taking care of 3 kids, it's a lot. It's a lot. So there is a letdown that's happening now. I think for him that there's some deeper recovery that he is needing to do, and he is doing, but there's consequences for this stuff, right? We've had massive financial loss, massive. And so there's a recovery there because of all of the expenses and the income loss that has resulted in my being sick. And then our kids, like I told you earlier, I don't know the impact of this on our kids longer term. But I do know that this has been a very impactful experience for them to see this like switch kind of click off in their mom in really developmentally tender times. All of my kids are like adolescent, puberty, middle school, high school. And so these are really crucial times of their own growth and development. And what I hope for, what I've prayed for, is that they would see hope, that they would see resilience, that they have experienced connection, that there has been deeper attachment that has happened in our family as a result of these losses. We've been really age appropriately honest about what has happened. And so just the truth telling that happens in our family has felt important for right sizing what's happening. We've always given them hope, that this is not the end, that we're doing everything that we can to, get better and take care of me and all of that. So I don't know the actual answer to that question and how it's impacted my family, because we're still kind of on the tail end of this journey, hopefully. But it has been, I definitely think our kids will look back on these 2 years and go, that was a pretty big milestone in my life.
There's something to be said for feeling supported in these situations, because I think that, and I don't know if you felt like this or not, but I think there's a space where you could have felt like you were letting them down.
Oh, 100%. I have felt that a lot, a whole lot. Yeah. I'm not going to pretend that that's not true. Yeah, because it's all the things that I can't do that I normally did. And all of the goals and all of the things that we anticipated to do as a family that we haven't been able to do. So I have felt a lot of those losses. And I've been honest about that with my kids and with my husband. But 2 things can exist at the same time, right? Like, this is hope deferred. This is, these are losses that we're experiencing, and maybe something else is happening simultaneously that we can embrace. So I think it can be a both and.
Wow. The space, what you're doing with the space right now in terms of having this conversation with me is, I think, very powerful, in that suffering so much loss, physically, mentally, financially, like you said, but continuing to show up is powerful. I think there's a certain energy that goes along with this, that you need to bring to the table consistently.
Yeah.
And I'm one to say, like, once again, I think I said this earlier, the difference between good and great is consistency. And I think that what it means for you to show up consistently and bring an energy to the table, even when you don't always have it, I think is special.
Yeah.
You talked earlier about this, an energy, something like a free energy guide for my viewers. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So we have a guide that's called Energy Expanders and Exhausters. It's a really simple 3-step guide to really help identify Where do you feel energized and where do you feel exhausted? Who and what is energizing you and exhausting you? And it's not rocket science, but it is science. I could do it, and again, like these last 2 years, I'm living proof that like energy is a pretty big deal in how you manage your life. And so I would even say the consistency piece that you said, the thing for you to be most consistent in is leading yourself to your whole self. You need to be more consistent about that than you are consistent in posting on Instagram or, drinking your water, or the most consistent thing is like holistically leading yourself. And managing your energy, I would argue, is way more important than managing your time. Time is finite. There's 24 hours a day, 7 days in a week, 365 days in a year. Energy is expandable. It's also exhaustible, right? Like I will wrap up this call with you and I am more energized than I was when I started it because of the kind of conversation, because of the transparency, because of the vulnerability, because of the connection that you and I are having. That is energizing to me, right? How we manage our energy, who we spend time with, it makes or breaks so much. And so no matter what kind of season you're in your life, you have the ability, no matter how many resources you have the ability and the capacity to expand your energy, to increase those things that will give you more energy and to minimize the things that are exhausting you. You have control over that. You have responsibility for that. So we have a guide that we will give to y'all. You can download it. And it's a simple 3 steps and it gives you some action steps for what do you do with the knowledge? Because just because you know something to be true doesn't change anything. You actually have to do something different to get those different results. And so the Energy Expanders Guide will help you to take some action really practically and specifically for expanding that energy and minimizing what's exhausting you.
I love that. And I believe, though, going back to your situation with suffering the loss that you did and doing your best to show up in an energetic way, just mentally being in an energy space when you couldn't be there physically. I think there's something to be said for that, for the research to moving forward. I'm going to change this up a little bit, and it's going to kind of work us to the end here.
Okay.
What's one word that someone who is suffering so much loss, the things that they think that they're going to have moving forward, and all of a sudden they start losing those things and they don't know how they're going to get it back. They don't know what next looks like. What's one word that would describe, or what's one word that you would want to make sure somebody understands when they're suffering loss?
Move.
The
reason we're stuck is because we don't move. We stay where we are. And when you are experiencing loss or pain or uncertainty, our natural human tendency, like just look at all the science, look at the research, our natural human tendency is just to stay. And then we get stuck. And the longer we stay stuck, the more we don't move. It's like this perpetuating cycle, right? So when you are facing loss, pain, uncertainty, do something. Go for a 5-minute walk, phone a friend, drink a glass of water, have a good cry, do something, meditate, do something that creates movements. It doesn't have to be the perfect thing. It doesn't have to be the right thing, but
it needs to be
step.
a thing.
It needs to be one effing thing. Do it. Do it. I don't care even if you don't want to do it. If you don't feel like doing it, do something. Because that doing of something, momentum creates momentum. Movement creates movement. And it's amazing once you start that, like it's a snowball effect, right? So look holistically, drink a glass of water, have a good cry, say out loud, I'm a badass even if I don't feel like one. Make a phone call to a friend, pray a prayer, go take a bath. There are things that you can do in this holistic framework that will give some energy and that will help you take that next kind of unlocking out of that stuck place.
there's a TV show and this kid was talking to their grandfather, and I could be messing this up. And the kid felt really defeated. Okay.
Mhm.
And he says, like, Granddad, like, what do you do when you have no idea what next looks like, when you have no idea what to do? And he just says, you do what you can. You know, I think there's science behind it, but it's simple, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I will say that this is going to sound crazy. So I'm a new parent,
Yeah.
and it's been a giant blessing.
Mhm.
And I've been getting this question a lot recently. Um, Tariq, like, how's fatherhood? Is it the hardest thing ever? It's, like, what's
Yeah.
going on, right?
Yeah.
And I take a deep breath. We're coming
Good.
full circle here. I tell my stories. And I was like, one, my wife is great. Great mother, okay?
Mhm.
Um, Fantastic. And maybe this is part of why I have this answer, but um, you know, Tariq, fatherhood's gotta be the hardest thing. Probably don't sleep, probably don't do any of these things. I say, you know, I don't know if I would define it like that.
Mm,
Um, I don't know if I would define it as something that I would consider hard or difficult or anything like that.
it's good. Yeah.
Um, I would tell you though, it's not easy.
Mm.
However, it is simple
Mm.
in that, like, obviously we're not communicating and having conversations like this with my 3-month-old, right? But there's something to be said. When he needs or wants something, he's gonna move.
Correct. Correct. Uh-huh.
If I need or I might not always have the energy to do what he might want me to do, and that's where the not easy part comes in. But
Yeah.
it's simple in that I feel like I've been raised in a way to show up the best possible way that I can by
Yeah.
my mother and my family.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like that's given me the tools to be able to show up in a way and saying, it's not easy, but I kind of feel like it's simple, you
Yeah.
know?
You're right.
And so I like that move that's going to leave us, because people don't want to hear that, oh, if I have a hardship, all I have to do is move. What do you mean? Yes, start somewhere
Mhm.
or stay where you are, because I, we already have the answer for right now. Like, we already know what's
Yes.
happening right now.
Yes.
How about you move? How about you do the thing? How about you ask the question? Because we already know what happens when we don't have the knowledge.
Mhm.
So I love that. Just move.
Mhm.
April, this has been an
That's
absolute
right.
pleasure. Once
Thank you, my
again,
friend.
where do people find you? Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, I think we'll drop in the show note a link to that wholeness quiz. So
Sure.
if you want to take a 20-question quiz to get a reality check of how you're doing in these 6 different parts, and then we'll give you some guided next steps of what to do with that knowledge. That would be the first thing. And then we'll also drop in the link to that energy guide if you want to figure out how to expand your energy and minimize those exhausters. That will be another great resource for you. But ezerandco.com is the best place to find me. It's EZERANDCO.com. Yeah, that's probably the best place to go.
Mm. This has been so amazing what you've done with the space, April. Thank you so much for being here. Anything else you want to leave the listeners with and make sure they understand before we get off here?
Well, thank you for being the best host. I mean, you created the environment for this conversation to take place. And I mean, I would really love to connect with folks who are listening and are resonating. So please do something. Do one of those two. Take that assessment or go through that guide. Because if there's a resonance in you, like if your heart has beat a little bit fast, if you have just connected, that is a sign and a symbol and like an indicator light that you need to do something. And if you don't do it, what you do is you actually self-sabotage. So don't just hang up this podcast and kind of move on. Do one of those two things so that you can keep moving. And every single step forward that you take moves you closer to who you've been created to be and what you're created to do, this purpose that you've got in your life. So that's what I would say to your people. Thanks, y'all.
MOVE.
That's how you spell it.
Move.
Move it.
I'm your mindset coach. April is your executive leadership coach. Make it happen today, everyone. This has been such amazing what we've done with the space. Leave us some comments and let's connect. 5-star ratings on the podcast. Not only I am Vision of Hope, but we are Vision of Hope. This is the Speak Your Vision podcast, your space for everything empowerment. Have a good one, everybody.